Hello, and welcome to the I Believe series, where we explore counterintuitive beliefs with experts in their fields. I'm thrilled to have Annmarie Brogan with us here today. Hi, Annmarie. Hi.
Hi, Senya. Thank you so much for having me.
Thrilled to have you here. And I'll tell you a couple of things about Annmarie, and then we're going to launch right in. One is Annmarie is a coach, a positive psychology-based coach and executive coach. And let me show you the book that she is a co-author of. She is the co-author of Beyond Tidy. Now, you might think that kind of book might be focused on tidiness or organization, but you may be surprised to hear what she has in store for us today. So hello, are you ready for us to get started?
I am. I'm very excited.
I'm going to start with the first big question that I really care about when people know their fields, which is, what is it that you believe to be true that others in your field would not necessarily agree with you on?
That's such an interesting question. And I think what we believe is a little counterintuitive to the way people usually approach different organizing projects. You know, a lot of times people start with what they can see, which is right in front of them. They view clutter as being very messy. And a lot of times we're called to come in because people don't like the way their spaces look, whether it's their office or their homes. And there's a little bit of confusion around what the real definition of organizing is. And it really is not about how neat and tidy something looks. And that is where I think we have a little bit of a different viewpoint than some others. Not necessarily so many others in our field. I think a lot in our field understand that, but we often address and go right for, okay, what's in front of us, without maybe addressing some of what is underneath. And so we like to go, and like the title of our book, Beyond Tidy. Because we feel that organization, a true organization, is the mindset and the behavior. And it's about how the setup of your drawers or your cabinets or your closets support the way that you want to live and support the way that you want to show up in the world. And so you can have a home that, or an office that doesn't necessarily, would never show up on Pinterest, so to speak. You know, it's not going to make the magazines. However, the person in charge of that space could be really quite organized, because organizing is knowing what you have and where to find it when you need it. Simply, easily, without stress.
And how is that as relevant for things as it is for finding other things that aren't tangible items?
It's relevant because of the space that it takes up, right? So, you know, that's another thing that, this is something actually that could really answer your question, something that we believe that maybe some other organizers don't believe, because I believe that all organizers are looking to do the same thing, which is to serve their clients and help them live a more simplified and efficiently run space so that they can have more time for family and friends. I really believe we're all on that same page. However, I also believe that organizing has been described as a series of deferred decisions very often. And it is. A lot of times clutter builds up because we say, oh, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to put this here for now. Right? And we have every intention of going back and addressing it later on. But then what happens? Life gets in the way, right? Life. And so one for now is not a big deal. But then when you have multiple deferred decisions, and a deferred decision can be as simple as, I went to the store and I bought something, but I'm really not sure if I'm going to keep it. So it doesn't go into a home. It doesn't get placed anywhere. It just gets dropped on the floor. And I have to decide, I don't know if I'm returning it. And then it sits on the floor, and, you know, or you're in the middle of something, but then you have to go somewhere else and you don't finish the task. And so you leave it unfinished. And then it piles up.
I think that's one of the funniest because I can resonate with it so much. One of the funniest parts of your book, which is, and I'll put the book up for us, which is the idea that we have a lot of places for a lot of different clutters. And you described so many of them. I don't know them offhand, but just like you described, I'll get back to this later, clutter. I may fit into this dress or want to wear it next year, clutter. This may be my mood, clutter. So you just have so many different buckets of clutter that as you say them, I can relate to them.
And I think when we're more intentional about focusing on where clutter shows up in our lives, that's chapter 3, types of clutter. Because obviously we know what clutter looks like. When you pull up the word clutter in your mind, you have a very kind of definitive idea of what it looks like. It looks stressful. It looks stressful in so many ways. But when you really think, where else do I have clutter in my world? And that's how in kind of structuring that chapter, which was Marie's idea, by the way, my partner, Marie Limpert, it started out to be, okay, well, we have paper clutter, we have mental clutter. That's a category of its own. We have digital clutter, looking at my desktop. Am I stressed out just looking at my desktop? But then it's like like you said, that's clutter by type. Then we have clutter by location. And really, you can have any type of clutter in any location. So, I have laundry room clutter, I have kitchen clutter, I have living room clutter. And then it could be various types. But then we have clutter by reason. And that's really, I think, what you're talking about. And the things that we're keeping in clutter by reason are very often intentionally kept. It's not a deferred decision. Mm-hmm. We're keeping it, and sometimes it's very neat and tidy, and it's just minding its own business. But it's taking away space from other things in your home that really you need to use and need to access often. So people will come to us saying, I don't have enough room to house all my things. Everything's messy. And it's not that they don't have enough space. Uh-huh. It's that they haven't put some conscious thought into what they're using their space for and how they're managing that space. And so, when we look at your space, what is it holding? Is it holding, but I paid good money for it clutter? That's a big one. When you invest a lot of money in something, and then people feel to get rid of that or to let it go is very challenging, because it means that it acknowledges a bad purchase. It makes you feel bad. There's a lot of negative emotions that come along with being disorganized.
So in a moment, we're going to get to some of your solutions for some of these things, because you're bringing up things that are true. As we do this, as you and I have been on these webinars in a sense through commenting a lot of time. So one thing I'm going to invite, if you are watching us right now, what is your definition of organization, or what is your definition of clutter? So give that to us in the comments, and we'll see what Annmarie says about that. Your definition of organization or your definition of clutter. So just think, where are you having problems with clutter? Where are you succeeding in organization? We actually have one that is a sort of a reflection of what you just said, and that's our colleague Eileen, who said, yes, organization is a mindset and behavior, and it supports the way we want to show up in the world.
Yes.
And Eileen also goes on to say, oh, that deferred decision, that she sinks in that hole periodically. My gosh, Eileen, I'm with you. That deferred decision, exactly. When we don't finish what we set out to do. We have another comment from Catherine, another coach, and she's saying, love how you interconnect mental mindset with other kinds of clutter. So let me because the reason I love counterintuitive beliefs is we think a lot of people who think about organization think about it similarly. In this field of teaching people about organization, whether it's things or mental, what is it that most other organizing experts believe that you deviate from them from? What is the kind of the standard belief?
I think the standard belief, I think we all kind of feel like having an organized space or living an organized life promotes wellness. I do think most of us believe that. But I think not a lot of attention is spent on having clients understand the why and the how beyond what we're asking you to do. So I think a lot of people, because you'll know from reading the book, a lot of the principles that we talk about, first of all, we didn't invent. They're very simple. And they're also things that have been talked about with other organizers. So it's not about people not understanding that you need one home for something, or that you want to group like items together. If you've read organizing articles and other organizing books, I think that people have a basic understanding. But what I think that Marie and I do when we work with clients, and we do cover this in the book, is we talk about the impact of why doing each of these principles, how it will impact you positively, and what's the cost when you don't do things a certain way, or when you don't put more thought into the way you set up your space.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is it would be good for everybody to go ahead and declutter, let's say, their desk or their desktop, but that's not enough.
It takes you to a certain point, but if you don't want it to get back to the way it was, there has to be a change in behavior. There has to be a change in mindset and a change in behavior. And often people are coming to us, and we also talk in terms of levels of organization. I think what people don't realize as well, there's a misconception, is that there's a lot of people that are more organized than they think. But they have this idea in their head of what it truly means to be organized and what level of organization you need to reach before you can say, I'm organized. And they don't celebrate where they are. Some people think they're disorganized.
You and I both have a positive psychology background, and I love that idea, because what you're saying is we may already be more organized than we are. What are some examples that you've seen in clients where they already have a higher level of organization than they think?
Well, getting back to what I said, that's a great question. Getting back to what I said before, where organizing is knowing what you have and where to find it when you need it, right? So I am going to be at a different level of organization than somebody else maybe who's starting out. But if they have an idea, if they have a particular idea of, all right, I'm going to use batteries as an example because we tend to use simple examples. If I need a battery in my home, I'm going to go downstairs to my junk drawer in my kitchen. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to look on the right-hand side. And I have it organized by battery size. And it's labeled. And I look at it. I either have it or I don't. It's that simple. I spend no energy. My internal GPS just literally takes me to that drawer and I open it up, right? So I'm very organized. Do I think that most people have their batteries organized in a drawer by type, labeled? No. You don't need to have that level of organization to be organized. I am just at that point on my journey with it. If you had all your batteries thrown into a drawer and it looked completely messy, or even if you had a category of stuff, like say, you talked about your kids going to school. Say you had all your kids' extra school supplies and it was not organized within the category of school supplies and you just threw it, but you knew where to go over and get it. Mm-hmm. Immediately and without stress, and maybe you do have to rummage to get what you want, but you know where it is. You are organized, and we celebrate that. And I think a lot of our clients are often surprised and energized to find out, oh, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. I really am organized. And then they realize, okay, I'm at level, say, C in the alphabet. I'm not starting at A. So now we can get you from C to D, and then C to D.
That's beautiful. That's almost like that miracle question in coaching, which is, if a miracle occurred and you were super organized the next day, what would it look like? And you suddenly think, wait a second, this already exists. I know where for example, I imagine that sometimes you might give the battery example to people and they would say, check, I've got that, Annmarie, I've got the batteries.
Right. I know where my batteries are. That's fine. Because the idea behind it, but like what we talk about too, it goes a little bit now beyond knowing where it is. It's because I know where they are. And if I need something and my whole household has the same association and we either have it or we don't. When I buy batteries, it's a very intentional and educated purchase decision.
I have to put up this comment. So said everything is labeled. We have a comment here. This is true. Everything, even me and the dog. Thank you.
That is the love of my life right there.
So you were saying it's intentional. Batteries are intentional.
They are. Well, the purchase decision is intentional. Like, you can apply that to anything else. I'm not impulse buying because I manage my space in such a way that I'm not impulse buying. I am very intentionally bringing things into my home and into my space. And so I can I have developed a personal mastery over my space and my belongings. And it allows me, again, to not just save time and money, but I save a lot of energy. And that affects how I show up in the day. I mean, when you think about everything that we do, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. When we think about everything
that we do in the morning, just before we even leave the house, we want people to think in terms of how the organizing can serve them and how the organizing can support how they want to feel. How do you want to feel when you start your day? Do you want to feel like you're energized and creative and you have the bandwidth to do what you need to do at work or out in life? Or do you feel depleted from the start because getting ready is like an Olympic event and you're exhausted before you even begin? And I think people don't recognize it as the superpower that it could be. It's more than just how does my desk look? It's can I think strategically because I'm not draining myself of energy because I can't find what I need at work. Or I'm not feeling confident. I'm not feeling like I'm coming across as a leader.
Yeah.
It can apply to both your professional and your personal life.
What if people start? So let's say they start, they've organized their desk and their desktop, and they've even organized the process of how they do things, but they start to slip.
Mm-hmm.
You have an example of that in your book, and they just start to slip.
Yeah.
What should you do then?
Well, first of all, everybody's going to slip. Just even organized people, our homes, everybody who finds out that Marie and I are organized says, oh, your house must be perfect. Of course it's not perfect. I have a husband, I have a dog, and I have a child, and I have life, and life happens. And so, no, it's not always perfect. But an organized home can be restored to order quickly. Because when you follow the principles and you do have a home for everything, and you do have an association of where it is, and you do manage your space effectively, when you slip because of life or whatever, you get sick sometimes, or a global pandemic happens and everything changes overnight, people need to give themselves some grace and to have some self-compassion. We just recommend going back to the basics. When you understand the basic principles, and that's why they are so simple, you can always go back to them. And we also support having a plan B, especially when you're developing new habits and behavior change, to have that plan B in place before you begin. Because again, it's about mental energy and conserving our energy so that we have more stamina, we have more willpower, and then we can keep our emotions positive. Because what happens? We're more solution focused. We have that more of that broaden and build mindset that comes from having a growth mindset. When we have a slip up, if we have a growth mindset, we're saying, okay, I slipped a little bit. What can I learn from that? What did I do well? What did work? Okay, and where did I get tripped up? And how can I learn from that and move forward? And you're not as thrown off by it. And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to try something else this time. It's the learning process. But then again, celebrating those wins along the way.
I love that you're saying it's coming back to it faster. So if your house is disorganized, you can come back to organized much faster. It's such a beautiful management and coaching philosophy. Whatever you have that's ordered, you can come back to order faster in that already. You
can absolutely. And it also ties back again to neat and tidy, not always equaling whether or not somebody is organized. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna out myself right now. You're going to appreciate this. So I have something that I want to do a video on for Organize Me, and I'm calling it my COVID clutter. If you were to open the right side, I have a double garage in my home. And my husband's laughing right now. I just can tell. I'm not even with him, but I can tell.
That's hilarious, actually. So, Annmarie, I just have to put it up. And I just want to call out that Marie your partner is watching us as well right now. So go ahead. So COVID, the double garage. Okay.
So I have a double garage. If you open the right side of my garage, every time we go into our home through the garage, my husband and I are laughing. We're like, you're a fraud. I'm a fraud, because there's all this COVID clutter. And I'm calling it COVID clutter because I can tell you exactly what all of it is. And when I take the picture, if I were to put up the picture, you would say, oh goodness, I had this woman on as an organizational expert because based on this. But the truth is my garage is extremely organized. I know where everything is, and I know what that clutter is. I can say that this whole pile is the pile for donation that happened right because we renovated immediately preceding the pandemic. I can tell you that all of these shoes are the shoes that just came back because we were traveling and I don't want them in my house and I'm airing them out and sanitize, so I can tell you what it is. But when you look at it from the outside, it's very laughable.
Thank you. It almost feels like it's vulnerable for you to share this, whereas the rest of us have this all the time.
Well, there's a profound vulnerability that comes with the organizing process. And when you're supposed to be, a master of organization, you feel the stakes are a little bit higher. But it's also important for people to understand that despite the fact that my garage looks like that, I live a very organized life. I know that when I put any amount of conscious attention on that, it will be fixed. And
here's a question for you about a slightly different kind of organizing. Somebody on Facebook says, what advice do you have for sentimental clutter?
Yes, that is a very, very, it's a very, very difficult thing for people to address when they have sentimental clutter. And I can speak to this on a couple of different levels because I did inherit a lot of things from my dad. My dad lived with us for the last 4 years before he passed away. And I can tell you, so if you can see the room behind me, this room, which is the first time I've ever had a big girl closet in my life. I grew up in an apartment in Brooklyn, and this house, although it's a lovely size, it really doesn't have a large closet space. So this is kind of a little dream for me. But this room was my dad's room in my home when we were, when he was living with us. And in order to create this space for myself, which I never had a dedicated office for myself. I never had a dedicated closet for myself. It meant letting go of a lot of things that, were left behind from my dad. And that was very challenging. So, just for people to understand that it's difficult, even when you are a professional organizer, it is very, very difficult to let go of things that have sentimental value. And so I guess it depends on, what we're talking about. There are different ways that you can address sentimental things in terms of, say, your kids' school keepsakes, or things that you inherit, from a grandmother, jewelry, or, I had my dad's furniture. I had my dad's, just his things from the Navy and all of that. It's learning how to look at your space in terms of what you're building and creating, and not so much of what you're letting go or of losing. We have a lot of clients that hold on to sentimental.
I love that in your book. I love that. I mean, it's almost meditative as you say it right now. It's about building and creating as opposed to letting go. Yeah.
It is. Approaching this room from that perspective and that mindset really, really was the catalyst for allowing this project to go forward, because otherwise it just feels like I was letting go of my dad. Right away, the reason why sentimental clutter is so difficult is because we attach it to the person with whom we associate it with. So if I let this go, I had to disassociate myself a little bit and say, it doesn't mean I don't love my dad. It doesn't mean I don't honor my dad. It doesn't mean I'm going to forget my dad. What things can I keep that allow me to remember him and to honor him in a way that works with my space and works with my life? And then what can I do with this space that will honor me and how I want to move forward? And when I was thinking about all the ways that I could create in this space, and I could serve the people that my audience, for organizing and for coaching, I knew that I would be doing my coaching work here, my one-on-one work with clients. I knew that I didn't know at the time I would be writing a book. So that was really exciting. But where did I do a lot of the writing for the book was in this space. And the content that I create helps people. So this room has become such an inspired place for me to create. And that allowed me to approach the project saying, my dad would be so proud of me for doing that. And my dad would love that this space is being used for that, because it would have made him sad for me to cry in this room or to just, leave it as a shrine to him. But that didn't mean that it was easy at all. And it didn't mean that I didn't keep things, but I found a place of honor for them. And I was very, very intentional with what resonated the most for me. I don't know if that answered the question. I think that was like
Thank you so much. No, I think that more than answered the question. It also showed us how you as an expert in this field, had your own kind of reckoning with a similar situation.
Absolutely. I was on the other side of the fence, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was experiencing all the feels, and that of course makes me able to help my clients from a different. I'm able to empathize in a much deeper way because of that. But I also, because I guess I have mastered the principles that we teach, I also can fall back on them. They're like a friend. They're an old comfort for me.
Or your basics, your fundamentals, like you said.
Yeah.
That person says, thank you, Annmarie, by the way, the person who you just answered.
Thank you for the question.
I have what may be our last formal question. And as I do, I usually ask it during these sessions. Please let us know in the comments, what is your takeaway? What is something you're taking away as an idea or an action, something for you from today's broadcast with Annmarie Brogan? What is your takeaway? Mm-hmm. And as we ask that, where should people start? So if they actually want to get more organized, whether mind or things, where should they start?
That is a very, very common question because people don't know where to begin. So a lot of times we say, begin with the area that causes you the most stress. We ask two questions. Which area causes you the most stress? And which area, if organized, would have the biggest impact on your daily life right now? So while you may have a very messy bedroom that really bothers you, maybe the kitchen, though, is the hub of your home, and now your school and your office and all the other different things that we're using it for during COVID, maybe that's the area to start. There's different things. We actually have a whole chapter devoted to that. Where do I begin? I know that one of the things that Marie added to that chapter, which I thought was awesome, was when you take a walk around your home and think about what feelings and emotions come up when you enter the room. And sometimes that can tell you what your contender is, because it really, and which part of the room. Is it the whole room that gives you that feeling, or is it just maybe a pile of paper clutter? So it may not be the room itself. It might be, I need to get my paper in order. And then again, there's always exceptions to the rules. Sometimes life kind of dictates. Maybe you have family coming in and they're going to stay with you, and you didn't know it, and all of a sudden you're scrambling to get your guest room settled. That's where you begin. But in general, it's like, what's causing you the most stress, and which would have the biggest impact if you organized it today on your daily life.
So two things to look at: stress and what would have the biggest impact on improving if you did it. Here's some takeaways that people are sharing.